A Flannel Man on Salt Spring Island. From Sloan. Patron and longtime listener here, writing to express what I think is gratitude. Although I'm now a retired psychologist, I've been a student of paranormal high strangeness since childhood. I'm no Paul Bestel, hey, there's only one of those. But I thought I had a pretty broad paranormal knowledge base. You rascally ghost story guys taught me new subject matter, leaving me stunned. I'll explain. I lived abroad for several years, and for one vacation in about 2015, my husband and I returned to the Pacific Northwest for a 3-week trip with an official start on Salt Spring Island, off Vancouver Island in the Salish Sea. We had never been, and were staying in a primitive cabin for a few days before moving to the mainland. Loving to hike, we read through options in a visitor book settling on Ruckle Provincial Park. We drove there, parked, ripped the map out of the guidebook, and took off. After a couple hours, we realized we had made a wrong turn or something and were not on the trail we had planned for. Truth be told, we were lost. I immediately blamed my husband for this because he ridicules me for being over-prepared for things, and this time I had no extra supplies or backup plan. You see how that makes it his fault, right? We kept following the trail we thought had the best chance of leading us in the right direction. We started gaining too much altitude, which I was sure was a mistake, but at that point we were committed. The park isn't that big, and we figured we would eventually arrive at a road or parking lot. I was heaving myself up a steep incline when there was a loud pop, coupled with blinding knee pain, resulting in me emitting an involuntary shriek. Within 2 minutes, my right knee swelled to the size of a melon, and I was unable to bear weight. My husband can't carry me, and I'll be damned if I'm going to call for rescue like a wimp. I hobbled forward with hiking poles, and my husband ran ahead to scout routes and then come back and confer with me. This became a slow, painful process that seemed to go on forever. With my husband far ahead and out of sight, a man rushed out of the trees and crossed my path from left to right, about 75 feet in front of me. He bulldozed through the brush where there was no path, which I noted at the time to be very odd. Moving at a rate in between a jog and a run, it seemed like he was running from or to something. He was in his 30s or 40s with dark hair that was a bit curly and about earlobe length. He wore a blue plaid shirt and denim jeans, no jacket, but maybe suspenders. I could not see what he had on his feet, but he had about a week's worth of beard growth. He looked straight ahead, which would be 90 degrees from my position. If I'm at 6 o'clock, he was running towards 3 o'clock, and never glanced in my direction. At the time, I thought he looked very scruffy and out of place, like something wasn't right. My first inclination was he had been camping for several weeks, but he didn't have a pack, and backpackers in the PNW never wear denim or things with such a high cotton content. The next time my husband came back to check on me, I asked him what the guy had advised regarding directions and so on. Husband had no idea what I was talking about. I insisted he had to have seen the guy because he would have crossed our trail. The situation made me more hissy because husband clearly hadn't been paying attention and everything was his fault. We continued on, eventually came to a road and hitchhiked back to our car. We were going in nearly the exact opposite direction from where we wanted to be. To shorten the story, my husband got me crutches at a charity shop. I took the Vicodin prescribed to him for dental surgery right before our trip. A bunch of important stuff in my knee had torn, and I took an international flight home in a wheelchair. Surgery and months of physical therapy followed. These events were soon forgotten until years later I was listening to the Ghost Story guys when a story about the Flannel Man was discussed. I was dumbfounded. I'm sure that's what I saw. Although my memory is that he wore blue flannel and not the typical red, I knew at the time that he was out of place. I had never previously heard any stories about a paranormal flannel man. So, thanks for that teaching moment, and keep doing your thing. When Paul comes to Seattle, I will take him to some Sasquatch locations. So, thank you, Sloan. Paul, you're all set for Sasquatch hunting in the greater Seattle region?
Well, Seattle is a city on my bucket list. I would love to visit it. I like to be as close to the potential most volcanic region in North America as possible, and why not? No, but I have there's something about Seattle that, you know, it just seems a place that with a lot going on both culturally and sporting, and obviously it's in such a beautiful part of the States. It's just incredible. Some of the views you've got there, where you can see all the, you know, Mount St. Helens and the light in the background. It's just, beautiful.
Yeah, Seattle is gorgeous. It's only a 2.5-hour ferry ride away from Victoria if you take the Clipper, and it is a lovely city. I don't see nearly enough of it. It's expensive. The Pacific Northwest is expensive.
Yeah,
But
and they've got a cryptid sports team there, haven't they?
which one?
The ice hockey team's called the Krakens.
Oh, I didn't know that. Very cool. All right. Seattle Kraken. And speaking of Kraken, Sloane's knee. I got to tell you, reading that story, man, I full body cringed reading about that knee.
Need some
Holy
Kraken
shit.
after that.
Yeah. Yikes. Funny enough, I read that just as the other day we got the carpets cleaned here, and I had to go get cash because apparently this thing is run by money launderers. And so I went to go get cash from the machine, and then my landlord texted me and said, "Hey, why aren't you at home? The carpet cleaners are here." And I thought, "Oh fuck, okay, fine." They were early, so I started running, which not something I really do. Turns out I'm better at it now than I was. I'm about 35, 40 pounds lighter, so that's probably got something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, my body's not used to it. And I felt my left knee getting kind of pissy as I was running. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to stop because, as much as I'd like to think that I'm suddenly going to discover I'm an athlete, more likely my whole body's going to rattle itself to pieces like an old Subaru.
Mm.
And so I kind of slowed down, kept walking. And of course, it's fine. But when I read Sloane's story after that, just the pop and the swelling, and I my whole body just went, oh yeah, so that's what we managed to avoid. Good times. But of course, every time I read it now, I'm just haunted by that image.
Mm. Oh yeah. I've knackered my knee several times. My favourite one was when I was playing football and I chipped my kneecap.
You chipped it?
Yeah, I got kicked in the knee. Somebody tried to take me out, and it just made me angry.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Well, yeah, I was just like fired up, so I played through the pain, and then I couldn't walk for 3 days. My knee swelled up to the size of a melon.
Oh man!
And it went a lovely sort of purpley blue colour. Beautiful.
Oh, did it need any kind of work?
No, I've always had a problem with my left knee. I had a bit where I would play in a lot of sports, and for about 2 years it squeaked like an old door, like proper went.
Oh God!
Like it needed oiling, like I was the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz. So they just had to slice it up, and I just got bits of cartilage and stuff floating about in it, and the squeaking noise was when the cartilage was catching in the hinge.
Oh
joint.
Christ!
So they just sliced it and hoovered it out. Did it on
Is that
local.
all?
It's quite good. You can hear go, and you can hear bits of stuff hitting, rattling.
Cool. Yep, that's great.
But anyway, I know you're going to say, man in a plaid shirt, but blue.
Yeah, but I feel like we've heard that before. I feel like that's not necessarily the first time we've heard. I know we've talked to like the plaid people. We've got a whole episode about it. But I'm pretty sure we've heard the blue before.
Yeah, the vast majority of the sightings are people wearing red and black, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And also is Ryan Sprague's disguise as well, because it's a running joke that he's Flannel Man, isn't it? Because he loves a plaid shirt as old Ryan. And but yeah, there's not many, but there are some there. I mean, some of the stranger Bigfoot reports. There's a whole raft of reports of Bigfoot wearing clothing.
Really?
Yeah. You've got to look for them, but you can find reports from sort of the early part of the 20th century where people saw Bigfoot. One of them, he was wearing a plaid shirt.
Okay.
Well, why not? Why not? I'm sure if you throw clothing into certain, give it to certain great apes or monkeys, I'm sure some of them would put it on if they found it and walk about and go, look at me. Aren't I the Bobby Dazzler?
I'm a human. Look, I got to pay rent.
Ooh, look at me,
Memes are
I'm
great.
a human. Ooh, I'm really stressed. Ooh.
Yours is better. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I hate my life. Look at this, I'm on a computer.
Folks, I wish you could see the visual for this. In fact, actually, you can, because we do have video stories on YouTube now. So I'm going to make sure I give this one to Adam to edit, because the world needs to see Paul's. Adam, cut all my shit. Anywhere I was talking, just keep Paul doing that, because I live for this.
So yeah, I'm trying to think. There is. I mean, this is one of the things about John Keel's The Mothman Prophecies. Everybody, unless you've read the book, people think the Mothman Prophecies is about Mothman, but it isn't. It's about all the other weird shit, and Mothman occasionally appears in it. One of the reports in that book is about a girl who is frightened to death in her bed when a flannel man turns up in her bedroom, and I'm trying to think if she describes him wearing a blue plaid shirt.
I forgot about that. Well, I know for the new version of my book, A Strange Little Place, available everywhere. Fine books are sold.
Forward.
It's with a great forward, a magnificent forward, one might say. A beautiful, bald forward. Sorry, anyways, I'm getting distracted.
Back in the room.
Powerfully masculine. But anyways, the last new story I added was someone in Hermit Valley, just outside of Revelstoke, kind of having a similar experience to Sloan, where they saw a man kind of in this case, he was hiking down past them, but when they turned around to look, he was gone, and there was absolutely nowhere he could have gone. And I believe he may have been wearing plaid as well. It's generally a fascinating phenomenon, man. I've still not wrapped my head around it. Again, I think there might be something to the pattern. I don't know if it's just something with our eyes make that are seeing that pattern. I don't know, but it's wonderfully strange. I will say though, Sloan, it's not impossible you just saw a hipster. I mean, that on Salt Spring Island, very possible. That's very close to where I am.
Yeah. Probably looking for a coffee shop.
Yep, he's running down to Ganges, which is where he's going to find the only good cup of coffee on the island. And it's a lovely island, I will say, but I feel really bad for the people living there because, God, again, there's this coffee shop. I think it's called the Treehouse over in Ganges. I think it's what it's called. Really nice food. It's solid. But if you're a local and you want to get in there, good goddamn luck. Good goddamn luck. That place has been featured in more magazines than Christy Turlington. It just...
One for the kids there.
Yeah, right. I was trying to think of a Lenny Klum. I don't know. That's right. Yep. Yeah, the Funky Bunch got that one.
Have you been listening to those top pops There's the Beatles recently? I love their new album.
All right, it's a little more recent than that. Have you heard the latest Blondie single? There we go.
Heart of Glass.
Yeah, there we go. This Lawrence Gowan fellow is really going places.
Oh, I tell you what, I'm sick to death of all these rumours about Liberace.
Straight as an arrow. Anyways, yeah.
I mean, once again, there are lots of people who just say it's this incredible new invention of skepticism, shared hallucinations.
Oh, yeah, which there is no mechanism to explain.
There's no proof that anybody has such a thing.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows anything about experimentation on hallucinogens or has done hallucinogens with other people do not see the same things, even under the influence of drugs and being subtly told what they should be seeing. People will see different things. Doesn't work like that. There's no such thing as a shared hallucination. It's bullshit.
Yeah, and that is one that really goats me because I hear that a lot by people who I would otherwise say are credible too. They'll just throw, well, it's a shared hallucination. I'm sorry? Or mass psychosis. That's another one. Shared psychosis. Oh, okay. If we give it like a diagnostic sounding name, like a diagnosis, then it sounds like it's more credible. But it's still just nonsense.
I mean, for me, the best researcher in this particular field is obviously Timothy Renner.
Right.
Who's done a lot of work on the Flannel Man or the Man in Plaid or whatever. So there's clearly something going on because they are very strange reports. The vast majority of them seem to occur outside, usually in forests or woods. Obviously, there are occasions where people have nighttime visitors, as we've just said about the young girl from the Mothman prophecies. So, are they portents of something? Obviously, here we have a sighting, and then the next thing there's a serious knee injury. Was that coincidence? Probably.
Oh, the sighting came after.
Sorry. So was it kind of like a seal of paranormal approval that the Plaid Man came wandering past after the knee had blown up?
Plaid Man says that is one fucked up knee.
She screamed so loud she woke a ghost up.
He's running because he thought he heard a bear. Yeah, I'm out of here. That's
Shit, Dan
Bigfoot coming.
Aykroyd's here. I'm off.
It's his ex-girlfriend, Bigfoot. That's who he thinks it was.
I mean, but once again, people try and say, oh, well, there might be people mistaking lumberjacks. Wandering about.
Yeah. And Sloan makes a point. I mean, I was joking about hipsters. Not likely to be out there that high up wearing clothes which are not suited to hiking. Now, I'm not a hiker, because fuck the woods, but that makes sense to me.
I mean, the other argument is people say, well, they're all ghosts. Are they?
Just a lot of dead lumberjacks out there. High mortality rate.
Well, there probably was, to be fair.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
So, you've got guys that would work from daylight to nightfall. So sometimes, especially in summer, they'd probably be working 14, 15 hours a day. Dangerous, sharp implements everywhere. A lot of people drinking too much.
Did I tell you the story about the old Dudley, the old man I used to do his books? He was he used to work out in the bush. He's just I can't remember. I think I met him through Radio Shack. This is 20 years ago now, when I worked at Radio Shack. But I started out installing a computer in his house, and it ended up me kind of becoming like his assistant, I guess, in a way. But he was just this retired logger, but he had a lot of money. And so I was doing his books because he had very particular requirements on how he wanted his finances arranged. And I remember he was this hunched over little old man, and his fingers were stained yellow with nicotine, and his ceiling was yellow with nicotine. And I met him. He had had a heart attack and then a stroke. He had recovered from the heart attack and then he had a stroke. So when I met him, he was recovering from all this. And you wouldn't know. He was just this made of steel old bastard. But he was telling me that he'd had an accident once when he was out in the bush. He fell out of a tree. He was scaling or something. I don't know exactly what. He was doing something. He fell out of the tree, and he thought, oh, man, my back hurts. Oh, okay, whatever. Kept going on with his day. And then when he'd had the heart attack, they'd done some kind of scan, and the doctor said to him, so when did you break your back? And he said, what? The doctor said, yeah, you clearly broke your back at one point because it's clearly been broken and healed over. And he goes, oh, I don't know. Maybe when I fell out of the tree that time. And this just hard old bastard just kept about his day. Well, can't miss any work. He was a different kind of person.
Yeah, they built him differently in them days.
I tell you, though, as different as they build them, they're still given to the ways of medicine, because the last time I ever worked for Dudley, I didn't drive, and he lived quite a ways away, so he would come pick me up. He was on some new medication that was making him fall asleep at the wheel. And so, yeah, this old man with a cigarette burning between his fingers, both hands on the wheel, and just nodding off, swerving into oncoming traffic. Well, Dudley, I'm busy. I'm not coming out anymore. Good day, sir.
Yeah. I once met a glass collector on my way to a football match in a pub in Charlton called the Anti-Galligan, which was one of the roughest, dirtiest pubs I've ever drunk in. And I've drunk in some rough and dirty pubs over the years. And the man, he was like you just said there, he'd got a cigarette on the go, and he got like a foot of ash.
Oh yeah.
On it, and obviously, and he got like a quiff there, so obviously he was old Teddy boy, and obviously he always kept his cigarette in his mouth because he'd got a streak of yellow.
Oh, no.
In his grey hair.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like a shit Billy Idol.
Oh, in the midnight hour, I cry no.
Carries on smoking that cigarette like that. So it'll certainly be a case for eyes without a face.
We're done here. Thank you, Sloan. This is the end of the ghost story, guys. Thank you, Sloan.